The laboratory smelled of sterile fear and terrible decisions. Dr. Velken Thross had spent 300 cycles analyzing predatory species across 47 different star systems, and he had never, not once, questioned the validity of the Predator Threat Index. The mathematical formula was elegant, brutal, and absolute. You fed in the biological data, genetic markers, hunting behaviors, and neurological patterns, and the algorithm spat out a number between 1 and 1,000. Simple, clean, reliable. A Carthaxian blood ripper. 743. The apex nightmare from the sulfur swamps of Vendic Prime. 891. The extinct vaccine Dreadmore that once terrorized the outer colonies. 962. Everything made sense, until the humans arrived. Run it again, Velken said, his 4 eyes blinking in non-synchronous patterns, a telltale sign of cognitive distress among his people. His assistant, a young researcher named Polymer with entirely too much enthusiasm for someone about to witness scientific reality collapse, tapped her clawed fingers across the holographic interface. Dr. Thross, I have run the analysis 17 times. The result is consistent. Consistent does not mean correct. With respect, Doctor, consistent usually means exactly that. Velken wanted to argue, but his throat sacs deflated in resignation. He stared at the readout hovering before them in accusatory red numerals. Impossible. The scale did not go that high. The scale was not supposed to go that high. 1,000 represented theoretical maximum lethality, the nightmare ceiling, the point at which a species became so perfectly adapted for killing that it should not, could not, exist within natural evolutionary parameters. And here were the humans, nearly doubling that number like it was some kind of sick cosmic joke. Perhaps, Paula suggested carefully, the algorithm is malfunctioning. The humans seem, well, they seem quite pleasant, actually. Ambassador Keller brought us those delightful baked goods last week. The ones with the chocolate? I believe she called them brownies. Velken's primary eyes swiveled to fix his assistant with a glare that could have curdled protein synthesis. Pleasant? Pleasant? Paula, do you understand what this number means? That the humans are very good at hunting. Very good, very good. Velken's voice climbed 3 octaves, a feat that would have been impressive if it were not so pathetic. A Verxen Dreadmore could disembowel a fully armored Krell warrior in 4 seconds. The humans score nearly twice as high. What do you think that implies? Paula considered this, her head tilting in that annoying way youth always tilted their heads when confronted with paradigm-shattering information. That perhaps the algorithm weighs certain factors too heavily. Show me the breakdown. All of it. The holographic display expanded, cascading data across multiple viewing planes. Velken began reading, and with each category, his sense of reality crumbled a little bit more. Binocular forward-facing vision? Check. Pursuit predator stamina? Check, check and check again. Omnivorous digestive system capable of processing both plant and animal matter? Disturbingly efficient? Check. Problem-solving intelligence? Off the charts. Tool creation and weapon development? They went from sharpened rocks to planet-destroying fusion devices in roughly 10,000 solar cycles. But it was the neurological data that made Velken's stomach, all 3 of them, clench in synchronized horror. Paula, he said quietly, tell me what you see in the psychological markers. She leaned forward, scanning the information. Her facial ridges, usually a pleasant shade of aquamarine, began fading to worried gray. Oh, yes. Oh my, indeed. Humans, according to the data, possessed something the algorithm flagged as catastrophically dangerous, pack bonding combined with abstract threat assessment. They could form intense emotional attachments not just to their own species, but to virtually anything. Their evolutionary history showed them domesticating other predators for ancestors' sake. They took wolves, literal apex carnivores, and turned them into pets. They weaponized friendship, Paula whispered. It gets worse. Look at their stress response systems. Paula scrolled through the data, her eyes widening. Wait, this cannot be right. Under extreme stress their cognitive function improves. They become more effective. Apparently their bodies flood with chemical compounds called adrenaline and cortisol, instead of shutting down or fleeing, which would be the sane evolutionary response. Humans experience enhanced strength, faster reaction times, and narrowed focus. They literally become more dangerous when threatened. That is, Polar searched for the word. Terrifying, unnatural, a cosmic design flaw that somehow became a feature? I was going to say efficient, but yes, those work too. Velken pulled up another data strand, this one showing human conflict history. The timeline scrolled backward. Recent skirmishes, ancient wars, territorial disputes going back thousands of cycles. The numbers were staggering. By the most conservative estimates, humans had spent approximately 90% of their existence as a species in active conflict with themselves. They were not just predators. They were predators who had spent millennia honing their skills against the only prey dangerous enough to provide meaningful challenge, other humans. Dr. Thross? A new voice interrupted his existential crisis. He turned to find Ambassador Julie Keller standing in the laboratory doorway, her bipedal frame relaxed, her face arranged in that peculiar expression humans called a smile. She was approximately 1.7 meters tall, with brown hair pulled back in a functional style, and eyes that seemed far too observant for comfort. Ambassador, Velken managed, trying to keep his voice steady, what brings you to our research wing? Oh, I was just dropping off some more brownies for the staff. Thought you all might enjoy them. She held up a container that smelled aggressively pleasant. I used dark chocolate this time, much better antioxidant profile. Polar's eyes lit up with genuine delight. Ambassador Keller, you are too kind. Please, call me Julie, and it's no trouble at all. Baking relaxes me. Velken watched this interaction with the detached horror of someone observing a small creature wandering unknowingly toward a camouflaged ambush. Predator. Except in this scenario, the small creature was his entire research facility, and the predator was offering them chocolate. Ambassador. Julie, he corrected, might I ask you a question of a somewhat personal nature? Sure thing, Doc. Fire away. Fire away. What a delightfully violent idiom for casual conversation. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt genuinely threatened? Where your life was in danger? Julie's expression did not change, but something flickered behind her eyes. Something ancient and cold. Once or twice. Why do you ask? What happened? Well, she said slowly, the first time was during my military service. Ambush scenario, 3 hostiles. Close quarters. Training kicked in pretty much immediately. And the hostiles? Neutralized. Meaning? Meaning they stopped being a problem. Her smile never wavered. The brownies are getting cold, Doc. You should probably grab some before they are gone. She left the container on a nearby console and walked away with that distinctively efficient human gait, bipedal locomotion that looked awkward until you realized how much endurance it provided. Velken and Polar stared at the brownies. She said neutralized. Polar whispered. I heard. Do you think she meant? I try very hard not to think about what humans mean when they use euphemisms for violence. Velken turned back to the display, pulling up additional data. Historical records from the human homeworld, Earth. The information had been compiled by the Galactic Council during humanity's application for membership, standard procedure for all prospective member species. He started reading, and immediately regretted it. Earth, by all reasonable measures, was a nightmare world. Gravity 20% higher than standard, atmosphere containing 21% oxygen, supporting massive wildfires and explosive combustion, weather systems that included rotating wind vortexes capable of destroying entire settlements, seismic activity, volcanic eruptions, predators at every level of the ecosystem. Polar, look at this. Earth has 5 distinct mass extinction events in its geological record. So, many worlds experience periodic die-offs. Yes, but humans evolved after the most recent one. They showed up on a planet that had already killed off 90% of its species, looked around at the remaining nightmares, and thought, yes, this seems like a nice place to build civilization. Perhaps they are simply very adaptable. Adaptable, Velken muttered, scrolling through more data. They colonized every major landmass on their planet, every single one, including frozen wastelands and burning deserts. They went to environments that should have killed them and just stayed. Built cities, thrived. A new data point caught his attention: human DNA analysis, genetic markers, inherited traits. He pulled up the comparison algorithms, running human genetic data against the established predator database. The results appeared. Velken felt his respiratory system momentarily forget how to function. "Polar," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "the humans share genetic markers with 73% of catalogued natural-born killing species." "What? How is that possible?" "They are not related to any of those species. Parallel evolution." "Not parallel. Convergent. They independently evolved, the same traits as species specifically designed by nature to kill and consume other living things." "Forward-facing eyes?" Check. "Binocular vision for depth perception during pursuit?" Check. "Grasping appendages with opposable digits for tool use and weapon manipulation?" Check. "High-protein diet requirements?" Check. "Social pack structure for coordinated hunting?" Check. Check. He pulled up images displaying them side by side. Human teeth next to Carthaxian fangs. Human hands next to Vendic claws. Human eyes next to Vraxim targeting organs. The similarities were impossible to dismiss. "They are not just predators," Velken said slowly, understanding finally crystallizing in his mind with terrible clarity. "They are the predators. They are what you get when evolution looks at an entire planet of death and decides to create something that can survive it all." "But they are so nice," Polar protested weakly. "They smile, they bake, they tell jokes." "Do you know what the most successful predators in nature do, Polar? They hide. They camouflage. They make their prey feel safe right up until the moment they strike." He gestured at the brownies. "They offer gifts. You think the ambassador is hunting us?" "No," Velken said, surprised by his own certainty. "I think humans learned something that most predators never do. I think they learned that cooperation provides better survival outcomes than constant conflict. But the capability, the genetic programming, it is still there, just waiting." He pulled up one final data set: human reaction time analysis, combat efficiency metrics, threat response protocols. The information had been volunteered by human military consultants, offered freely during the membership application process. At the time, Velken had thought it was impressive. Now, he recognized it for what it truly was: a warning. Average human reaction time to visual threat stimulus, 0.25 seconds. Trained human soldiers could assess, identify, and respond to hostile action in under 0.17 seconds. Their military training programs focused on something they called muscle memory, allowing them to perform complex defensive actions without conscious thought. They had weaponized instinct itself. "Run the simulation," Velken ordered. "Which simulation?" "Threat scenario theta. One human, standard equipment, versus a Carthaxian hunting pack." Polar's fingers danced across the interface. The holographic display shifted, showing a tactical projection. One human figure, surrounded by 5 Carthaxian bloodrippers, apex predators capable of tearing through reinforced armor plating. The simulation ran. It was over in 43 seconds. The human won. "Again," Velken said. "Add 3 more Carthaxians." Same result. 59 seconds. "Again. Replace Carthaxians with Vrax and Dreadmores." The human adapted, using different tactics. 1 minute, 12 seconds. Velken ran 17 more simulations, each time increasing the threat level, adding environmental hazards, removing resources. The human kept winning, kept adapting, kept surviving. Finally, he shut down the display, his hands trembling slightly. "Polar," he said quietly, "we need to inform the council." "Tell them what?" "Exactly. That humans are dangerous? They already know that. It is why humanity was carefully evaluated before membership approval." "No. We need to tell them that the Predator Threat Index is not broken. We need to tell them that humans are not an anomaly or an error in the algorithm. We need to tell them," he paused, searching for the right words. We need to tell them that we have been measuring predators wrong this entire time. We have been measuring what species can do. The humans showed us what matters is what a species chooses not to do. Understanding dawned in Pollar's expression. The score is not a threat assessment. No, it is a restraint assessment. Every point on that scale represents a conscious choice not to kill, not to hunt, not to dominate. The humans score 1847 because every single day, every single interaction, they are actively choosing not to be what their evolution designed them to be. Velken looked at the brownies sitting innocently on the console. Ambassador Keller could have killed us both with her bare hands when she walked in here. The thought probably never even crossed her mind. That is what makes humans truly terrifying. Not what they are, but what they choose not to be. Polar picked up a brownie, examining it carefully. So these are not a trap? No. I think these are proof that the most dangerous predator the galaxy has ever seen decided that making friends was more interesting than making corpses. They ate the brownies. They were delicious. And somewhere in the back of Velken's mind, a small voice whispered that maybe, just maybe, having humans as allies was far preferable to the alternative. Because if that predator score ever stopped being a restraint assessment, if humans ever decided to stop choosing peace, well, the galaxy would learn very quickly why Earth had named itself after dirt. It was the only thing that would be left. 3 days after the brownie incident, as Velken had begun calling it in his personal logs, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Emergency sessions were rare. The last one had been called 47 cycles ago when the Zinthean Collective accidentally weaponized a moon. This one, however, was different. This one was called because Dr. Velken Thross had submitted a report titled Comprehensive Predatory Analysis of Homo Sapiens, Why We Should All Be Very, Very Grateful They Like Us. The council chamber was a magnificent structure, floating in neutral space between 3 star systems, accessible only through quantum gateways. 200 species had representatives present, each one looking varying degrees of concerned, confused, or in the case of the insectoid Trill delegate, mildly hungry. The Trill were always mildly hungry. Velken stood at the central podium, his presentation materials hovering in holographic splendor around him, and tried not to vomit from sheer terror. Public speaking was not his strength. Analysis? Wonderful. Research? Delightful. Standing in front of 200 species and telling them their newest member civilization was essentially a planet full of barely restrained murder machines. Absolutely horrifying. Honored delegates, he began, his voice only shaking slightly. Thank you for your time. I understand this is unusual, but I assure you, the findings I am about to present warrant immediate attention and discussion. Ambassador Julie Keller sat in the human delegation section, looking utterly relaxed. Next to her was Commander Marcus Webb, a military liaison with shoulders that seemed specifically designed to intimidate furniture. He was eating something called beef jerky, and appeared to be enjoying it immensely. Velken tried not to think about the fact that humans casually snacked on preserved animal flesh during diplomatic proceedings. As you know, Velken continued, the Predator Threat Index has been our primary tool for assessing dangerous species for over 600 cycles. It has never failed us until now. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Quelix delegate, a gelatinous being whose name was functionally unpronounceable, burbled something that the translation matrix rendered as failed. Explain immediately. The system did not fail, exactly. It simply encountered something it was never designed to measure. A species so far outside our baseline parameters that the results appeared impossible. He pulled up the data. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of non-binary configuration, I present to you humanity's predator score. 1847. Silence. Then chaos. Delegates erupted in overlapping questions, accusations, and in one memorable case what appeared to be a religious prayer for deliverance. The Trill delegate fainted, which for Trill meant collapsing into a chittering pile of exoskeleton segments that would need to be reassembled later. Order. The council speaker, an ancient Vector named Historian Moss, slammed his resonance staff against the floor. The sound echoed like thunder through the quantum-stabilized chamber. Dr. Thross, Please explain how this number is possible. The scale maximum is 1,000. Yes, Velken agreed. It was 1,000. We have since recalibrated. Turns out we were thinking too small. He pulled up the genetic comparison data, showing human DNA markers alongside known predator species. Humans share genetic traits with 73% of documented apex predators across the galaxy. Not through relation, but through convergent evolution. They developed independently almost every single biological advantage that natural selection deemed useful for killing. Commander Webb raised his hand. Quick question, Doc. Is this the part where everyone panics, or does that come later? Commander, with respect, several delegates are already panicking. Fair point. Carry on. Velken displayed the Earth data next. Gravity, atmosphere, extinction events, hostile wildlife, weather patterns that included phenomena with names like hurricanes and tornadoes, which sounded like ancient war gods, and probably were. Humans evolved on what we would classify as a Class 12 death world. For context, we currently prohibit settlement on anything above Class 7. Their planet has tried to kill them approximately 5 billion times over the course of their evolutionary history, and they simply refuse to die. The Quelix delegate burbled again. Surely this is adaptation, not predation. Oh, we are just getting started. Velken pulled up human history files. Let me tell you about something called the Bronze Age collapse. Human civilization, approximately 3,000 cycles ago, experienced complete societal breakdown. Empires fell, cities burned, trade networks dissolved, 90% of their major settlements were destroyed. And you know what humans did? Went extinct? Someone offered hopefully. They rebuilt. Within 500 cycles they had not only recovered but had developed more sophisticated governmental systems, better agricultural techniques, and improved metallurgy. They looked at total civilizational collapse and treated it like a learning opportunity. Ambassador Keller smiled. We are very good at learning from mistakes. Yes, Velken said, his voice climbing again. You are terrifyingly good at learning from mistakes. Your species has survived. Ice ages, plagues that killed 30% of your population, 2 separate planet-wide wars involving nuclear weapons, and something called the Disco Era, which my research suggests was a cultural phenomenon, so devastating that humans still have not fully recovered. That got a laugh from Commander Webb. Hey now, disco was not that bad. Commander, I have seen the clothing. I have heard the music. I stand by my assessment. Velken pulled up the military data next, and the mood in the chamber shifted from nervous to genuinely alarmed. Human combat efficiency is unprecedented. Their military training focuses on something called controlled aggression. They teach their soldiers to enter a mental state where they can inflict maximum damage while maintaining tactical awareness. They have specialized forces trained specifically for operating in hostile territory with minimal support. Show them the SEER data, Julie suggested casually. The what? Survival, evasion, resistance, escape training. Might as well give them the full picture. Velken pulled up the files, read them, and felt his respiratory system seize up again. You train your soldiers to survive torture, deliberately. Well, yeah. Can't have our people breaking under interrogation. That would be bad operational security. You simulate torture, for training purposes. Julie shrugged. Better to experience it in a controlled environment first. Plus, it builds character. The chamber exploded in alarm discussion again. Historian Moss had to slam his staff down 3 more times before order returned. Ambassador Keller, Moss said slowly. Are you seriously suggesting that humans routinely expose themselves to extreme physical and psychological stress as standard military protocol? Oh, that is just military. You should see what our athletes do. Marathon runners, for example, they run 42 kilometers for fun. Some of them do it in extreme heat or cold. One guy ran across an entire desert once, just because. Why? The Quelix delegate burbled desperately. To see if he could? Mostly. Humans are weird like that. Velken regained control of the presentation. This brings me to my central thesis. Humans are not dangerous because they are predators. Humans are dangerous because they are predators who developed abstract reasoning, complex ethics, and social cooperation. He displayed a new chart. Every species in this council has a predator score below 400. We achieved spaceflight, diplomacy, and interstellar cooperation because we are not naturally inclined toward violence. Humans achieved all of those things despite being naturally inclined toward violence. They had to consciously, deliberately build societies that suppressed their predatory instincts. And that makes them more dangerous? Asked the Trill delegate, who had been reassembled and was still looking shaky. No, that makes them more trustworthy. The silence that followed was profound. Explain, Historian Moss commanded. Velken took a breath. Every species in this chamber follows peaceful protocols because it is our nature. We are not choosing peace. We are defaulting to it. Humans have to choose peace every single day, in every single interaction, against every single instinct their evolution gave them. A human choosing to be your ally is not a passive state. It is an active, continuous decision. He pulled up Ambassador Keller's file. Julie Keller, military service 12 cycles, combat deployments 7, confirmed hostile engagements 23. Current occupation diplomat. She has chosen to use words instead of weapons, not because she cannot use weapons, she is demonstrably excellent at using weapons, but because she prefers words. Julie waved at the assembled delegates. Hey there. Commander Webb, Velken continued, military service, ongoing, specialization strategic operations, has personally trained over 400 soldiers in combat techniques. Also volunteers at a youth education center, teaching mathematics to children, because apparently humans can switch between training people to fight wars and helping small humans learn arithmetic without experiencing cognitive dissonance. Marcus grinned. Kids need to know their multiplication tables. How else are they going to calculate ballistic trajectories later? That is not helping, several delegates shouted simultaneously. Velken pulled up his final dataset. I ran simulations, hundreds of them. Combat scenarios, survival situations, resource competition models. In every single scenario where humans were placed under stress, they became more effective, not less. Their performance improved when things got worse, and yet, he paused for emphasis. In every single diplomatic scenario I simulated, humans consistently chose cooperation over conflict when given the option, even when conflict would benefit them. Moss asked. Especially then, humans have this bizarre cultural concept they call honor. They will deliberately choose a harder path if they believe it is the right thing to do. They will sacrifice immediate advantage for long-term cooperation. They will risk their lives for abstract principles. That sounds insane, the Quelix delegate observed. It is insane. It is also why they are the most reliable allies in the galaxy. He glanced at Julie and Marcus. Every human in this station, every human on their ships, every human in their diplomatic corps could kill most of us with their bare hands, and not one of them has. Not because they cannot, but because they will not. That is not weakness, that is strength we did not even know how to measure. Historian Moss leaned forward. So your recommendation is, accept humanity fully, without reservation. Because any species that spent millions of cycles learning how not to be what they are, those are exactly the kind of people we want beside us when things get difficult. The vote was unanimous. Later, after the session ended, Velken found Julie and Marcus in the station commissary. They were eating something called pizza, and the smell was making his sensory organs very confused about whether they should be attracted or horrified. Doc! Marcus called out. Good presentation. Very dramatic. Loved the part where everyone panicked. I did not intend for everyone to panic. Could have fooled me. He took another bite of pizza. Want a slice? Only one way to find out. Julie laughed. Marcus, stop trying to poison the nice scientist. Dr. Thross, thank you. For the presentation, I mean, and for understanding. Understanding what? That we are trying, every day, to be better than our worst instincts. She looked at her pizza thoughtfully. My grandfather fought in the last war, back on Earth. He told me once that the hardest battles are not fought with weapons. They are fought in your own mind every morning, when you decide what kind of person you are going to be. Your grandfather sounds wise. He was. He also taught me 12 different ways to disarm an opponent using kitchen utensils, so he was a complicated man, she smiled. We are all complicated. That is kind of the point. Velken sat down, accepting a slice of pizza despite his better judgment. It was, he had to admit, surprisingly good. Humans had weaponized cheese somehow. He was afraid to ask how. Ambassador, may I ask you a personal question? Sure. When you walked into my laboratory, and I asked about your military service, you said the hostiles were neutralized. What did you actually mean? Julie was quiet for a moment. I meant they survived. Barely. But they survived. Because even in combat, even when my life was at risk, I was trained to use appropriate force. Not maximum force. Appropriate force. The goal was never to kill. The goal was to stop the threat and bring everyone home alive if possible. Even the hostiles. Especially the hostiles. Because maybe, eventually, they could choose to be something other than hostile. Everyone deserves that chance. Velken looked at this human, this walking nightmare, who had scored higher than natural-born killers on every predatory metric, sitting here eating pizza and talking about giving enemies second chances, and he understood the Predator Threat Index had not failed. It had simply revealed a truth they had not been ready to see. The most dangerous predator in the galaxy was not the one who killed without thinking. It was the one who thought before killing, and then chose not to. Ambassador, Velken said quietly, I am very glad humans decided to be our friends. So are we, Doc. So are we. They finished their pizza in comfortable silence, 3 beings from 3 different worlds, sharing a meal in a station floating in neutral space. Outside, the galaxy turned, stars burned, civilizations rose and fell, and somewhere on Earth, a planet that had tried so very hard to kill them, humans kept making the same choice they made every day. The choice to be better. The choice to be kind. The choice to pack lunch for their colleagues, and teach mathematics to children, and bake brownies for nervous scientists. The Predator Threat Index score of 1847 did not change. But now everyone understood what it really measured. Not danger, but hope. The hope that even the most perfectly designed killers in the galaxy could look at the universe and decide that building was more interesting than destroying. That friendship was stronger than fear. Velken finished his pizza slice and decided that humans were right about one more thing. Sometimes the scariest monsters make the very best friends. You just have to be brave enough to offer them brownies first.